There were two things said last night that I thought really pointed at the crux of the search. One person said that the reason that he had taken up a strenuous meditation practice was because he was trying to escape suffering. And then another woman mentioned that our question was about healing. What is it about healing? And it seems like these two issues, the issue of escaping suffering and the issue of healing, whether it's healing the body or healing the psyche, some kind of search for something to tend to the wounds that everyone has experienced. There are multiple woundings, part of every life, even the most privileged lives. Not to mention the whole collective woundedness, or the animal nature, or just the wound of discovering that you're human. It's shocking, the mess of it all. So there's this, unless one just is successful in numbing or dissociating, which is usually attempted, and some people are successful at that, just creating scar tissue over the psychic or physical or emotional wounds and getting on with it. But none of you, I suspect, have been entirely successful. And that's good. That's good, because the wound itself then serves as a push, serves as some kind of grit that won't let you be comfortable until you get it tended to. And so, of course, we search in multiple ways, multiple experiences, spiritual and worldly, to try to get that ache or hurt to go away, which is suffering. And then at some point, perhaps we turn to the spiritual life with the hope that enlightenment or association with a particular teaching or teacher will take that hurt away, will take the suffering away. And so we will do what the teaching says, or what the teacher says. And we will do it over and over in the hope that it will be taken away. When you have a true teacher and a true teaching, that's recognized. And with the greatest compassion and the deepest ruthlessness, you are thrown directly into the center of the woundedness, of the hurt, of the suffering. You are stopped in your tracks. All the goingness of the mind is to escape that essential, primal hurt and all of the peripheries of that hurt. But the essential, deep one, that doesn't even have a name, we can call it the human condition, or conditioned existence, or the fact of suffering. But there's some drive to escape it. And that drive actually brings you full circle to meet it. It's, of course, a level of maturity, because you can only be ready to meet it if you've tried numerous avenues of escaping it, only to find it waiting for you somewhere along the way or at the end. And then usually there's a backtracking down that avenue, and another avenue is tried. And Certainly everyone in this room can relate to that. So I'm very happy to offer you the invitation to stop. To stop searching for relief. To stop searching for healing. This doesn't mean that you go asleep to stop searching. That also has been attempted as an avenue. It doesn't mean that you give up in despair. That has been tried. It's that you stop the search for something to rescue you from yourself. When the lady spoke to me about healing, she was speaking of the body, it seemed to me. Emotional body, physical body, mental body, it doesn't matter. The body. And we have all experienced healing and the need for healing in the body. And we've experienced healings coming, and we've experienced healings not coming. If we attach our desire or our intention for truth onto the healing of the body, then invariably we overlook what is by its nature whole, pure, free, at ease, in peace. This is the simple truth. The complication arises because of these avenues of escape that have been etched into the mind, grooved into your particular mind, your particular ways. They may be like someone else's ways, but they have your twist or distortion to them. It is possible in an instant to recognize the attempt to escape, the impulse to escape, the command to escape, and in the face of that, to stop, to actually turn and face what it is that is being attempted to escape. It may be physical, it may be mental, it may be emotional. It may be death, it may be life. It may be the deepest fear, it may be the deepest bliss. It may mean facing the notion of who you are. It may mean facing the notion of who you're not. What it does mean for everyone is recognizing the impulse to escape, and also recognizing that in the midst of that impulse there is a choice. And that choice is to say no to the escape and yes to the facing of that demon or that God. This choice is the most supreme power of mind, and it is used daily in many trivial matters, and some matters that aren't so trivial. But this choice is a whole different realm from any other choice ever made. And once it is made truly, fully, giving every bit of your power of choice to the choice of stopping the escape, then choicelessly, exquisitely, effortlessly, with some pain, with some pleasure, the revelation that is the treasure of your being reveals itself as the truth of who you are, discovering yourself as that truth. I am very honored and happy to assist you in that by bringing this invitation from my teacher, from his teacher, by playing with you, wrestling with you a little, working it out with you. Because the subtle arguments of mind of why you can't stop or shouldn't stop right now, will stop later, have a huge hold until they are investigated. And the investigation begins with asking yourself what it is you really want. Really. And what it is, and if what it is you really want is simply to be done with this woundedness, then you will continue to search until you find something that temporarily, at least, makes you feel better. If what it is you want is really the truth of the matter, then you will have all support necessary to turn and face what you have run from for aeons, what all of humanity has run from, what is in your cellular structure to run from. There is a force that is so huge, so unbelievable, that uses every form in your life as a pointer to the support that is there, that is here. You play a very essential role. You have to choose the support fully, completely. The struggle that's involved is only around whatever is still being held as a lifeline out of the choice, just in case it doesn't work. Just in case. So I'm suggesting that you leap deeply into the core of your being. I know that some of you at least have an intimation that what you will find there is truly horrible because of your wound. But I have had the great occasion to meet many people in these years of offering these meetings, these satsangs, with the whole spectrum of woundedness, from psychosis to just the middling neurosis that most of us have to deal with. And I have never met anyone who, when they were willing to really tell the truth and face it, no matter what they thought it was, always they found the beauty and peace of beingness. It's my experience. You have seen people, if you've seen videos or attended meetings, you have seen people have the experience, and you have perhaps touched it yourself. There is a treasure that is who you are. And it's saying, come in. And because it has been hidden for so long, it perhaps appears dark and ugly and forbidden. And you have gained support to not look at it. The whole socialization is to not look at that. But here you are, unsocialized, blessedly, at least to the degree where you can recognize that there is a yearning, a great yearning, to know who you are. There are people who have death experiences, accidents or whatever, where they die and leave their body and are conscious of their body for a moment or then return. But their life is never the same, as they will tell you. Life is not the same because they have, for maybe it's just an instant, recognize that there is an existence independent of what they thought was reality, what they thought that would be lost in death. So this can happen by accident, in anesthesia or whatever. It just can happen. And it can happen from the grace of the teacher. Or it can happen out of the blue in a moment, a clap of thunder moment. And the story, even though it may reappear, the emotions, even though they may reappear, the circumstances may get better or get worse, but some essential shift has occurred. Everyone in this room has had that essential shift. You may not remember it, but I guarantee you could not sit in this room for yesterday and today without at least an echo or a resonance in your cells of that essential shift. Maybe you were born with the shift. Maybe it happened pre-verbal memory, so you can't put it together as part of the story of me. But it is possible for you to recognize that once this essential shift has happened, to whatever degree it's recognized has happened, there is choice. And that choice involves the willingness to be naked to the unknowable truth of oneself. Or, likewise, the willingness to return to telling the same story of oneself. The shift has still occurred, and it still is its reverberations are beautiful. But this choice that I'm inviting you to, this choice to stop, this choice to recognize what has always been stopped before the shift of recognition, or even if there's no shift, what is always stopped, what is always underneath it all, every moment, has nothing to do with your story. And your story doesn't disturb it in the least. So it's not about fixing the story, although you're welcome to if you like fixing your house or your face or your car. That's fine. You enjoy that, but recognize what is already free and open.
I lost sight of that in my investigation because I was so sad as I ended up with the the giving up just a story of that I've ever existed.
But what you said when you came up here was that your investigation was continuing.
Yes,
So
that's true.
So you knew something deep inside enough to not say, well, that's the end of that investigation. You knew the investigation was continuing. And that's what you brought here to this chair this morning, was this continuing investigation. There is discouragement sometimes in investigation. There is pain sometimes in investigation. Certainly there can be deep sadness or fear or despair or anger or hopelessness or whatever, infinite variations and combinations of those. Certainly. But the choice is always to stop following the mind out of the investigation and to return into the willingness, the deeper willingness, to discover what is really true.
I have questions from yesterday. Right now, I really don't feel a question unless I started generating them.
This is a very good point. So there's a neutral space there where you know you have to go into the past to generate a question or to generate a story or a problem or history. It's a point of choice. This is the point of choice. It's excellent to see that. Generally, you know what you choose. Generally, we choose to go into the past, to create a history, a problem, because it was such an important problem that if we just don't generate it, well, what does that mean about the importance of it? And so since there's some investment in the importance of it, we go back into the past, and this is called rebirth. This is the choice of being reborn with your problems, with your miseries, with your questions, day by day. Once you are aware of that choice, then you recognize exactly what is required. There's actually some effort. There's some attention on what was. There's some further investment of time, energy, and attention. And then we have a question. We have a past. We have a problem. We have searching for the answer, or the alleviation of the problem, or the end of the story. But the search follows the rebirth. And the rebirth follows that moment of choice and choosing to be reborn as sufferer, rather than choosing to simply be here, being nobody, being nothing. Yes, you see, the moment gets very strong. And with the strength of the moment, there can be some, but I could really disappear here. And then the whole importance of my life will be of no importance. But you have to understand that's going to happen anyway. You really will disappear. And even though you may make great contributions, finally they'll disappear too. I mean, what? They'll last 2,500 years, 3,000 years, 4,000 years, maybe 1,000,000 years if you make the greatest contribution. But in the scope of time, 1,000,000 years is not that big a deal. So the question becomes, are you willing in this moment to not be reborn? Just right now. Forget what you think about rebirth, reincarnation. Just right now. To not be reborn. To just be here. Unformed. You see, the pull is strong. And yet there's always that choice. If you choose to not be reborn just right now, then you can definitely recognize what is unborn. What is still alive without history, without question, without story, without suffering, without problem, without searching. What is still alive. And the vastness of it, and the peace of it. And you can recognize that as yourself. Having nothing to do with birth. And in that recognition, then even rebirth is no big deal. If you're willing to be true to that recognition, then be reborn 1,000 times a day. What does it matter? It's being reborn. The story, the history, the problems even, the questions are being reborn in who you are. The vast intelligence, conscious of itself as you.
But the question I have is, I know for a fact, it's certain that this personal entity, this individuality, is really non-existent.
Oh,
that's
how can you know
100% known. But here's the
But wait, before you do a but, how is it possible to know? How is it possible for this to come from an apparent individual? This is the mystery, the beautiful resolution of this mystery of being. That an individual can say, I know for a fact the individual does not exist. This is thrilling. This is the paradox. So the mind will have it, that cannot be. But the truth is, yes, it is. So wait, before you... Let's just revel in that. Yeah. You know this with such confidence and such clarity. Let this just reverberate out. Let someone else drink of this confidence. Because it is known in the core by everyone. And the role that we can play in one another's lives is recognizing that and confirming that and deepening in that. Yeah. So here comes the deepening.
Okay. Now here's the dilemma. I cannot tell my dilemma, but here's the dilemma.
Dilemma. Okay.
Dilemma. Now, the thoughts that come into the mind,
yes,
sometimes are very powerful.
Yes,
and I sometimes get completely carried away. And
Like going to a good movie.
I completely forget everything that I have done, all this meditation and all the reading that I have done is completely forgotten.
Yes,
And
then
it's
we're
like-
talking really a good movie. Or else it's just, it's you're watching it out of the corner of your eye, but this is like real theater then.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, it is a movie, but again, but the things, because of the fact that I completely get carried away, and I don't like the things that sometimes that happens.
Yes.
And looking back at it, how could I have possibly done it? I mean, how could I have completely identified with my thoughts or my desires and completely forgotten?
This is what you have to see. How?
Yeah.
How did you do it? Because there is a how to that.
Yes.
There's no how to surrender, but there is a how to how there is identification.
Correct.
Excellent.
Right. Yeah. How did I get identified? Yes, how? Tell me how. And it was
so
not.
I can tell you the pattern that would exist here.
Okay, but here's also the question that I have. Is this identification also coming from consciousness?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
So it's not my fault.
It is your fault.
It is my fault.
Because fault also comes from consciousness.
Okay.
That's the slippery way out. Since it's all consciousness, well, hey, do what we want to do. It's not like that.
Okay.
That's a trick of the mind. You have a very intelligent mind.
Okay.
That's both a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
A blessing in that there can be a deep, deep drinking. And the curse is that deep drinking, then there can be, the mind is trained to be slippery. Find a way around to say,
Right.
so I still get to do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
So what do you want? What do you really finally want? Really?
Well, I was listening to a video of yours about a year or two or 3 years ago, and that's when I actually came to know about you. And it was very strange. The first time I saw your video, it was so attractive. The things that you said it was as if me talking.
Yes.
It was exactly like me, talking. Something was happening, but it was so beautiful. But anyway, I think you talked about being vigilant.
Yes. That's right. That's what we're talking about here.
Right. And how can I be vigilant?
Yes.
Because again, if I have to be vigilant, there has to be some effort involved.
Only if it is you doing vigilance. And then this is still the property of the mind.
Right.
But who are you? If you are not this individual, who are you?
I cannot describe myself.
Yes.
I don't know how to describe myself.
Well, I will name you then.
Okay.
Consciousness.
Okay.
Awareness.
Okay.
Is awareness ever asleep?
During deep sleep, I'm not aware. That
You're
I am.
aware that you're in deep sleep because the next morning you
Yes.
can say, I was in deep sleep.
Right, but at that instant of deep sleep,
Well, there's no thing to be aware of then,
Yeah,
right?
right,
In deep
right.
sleep, there are no phenomena appearing.
Right.
There are no dream bodies. There are no
Yes.
body sensations.
Yes.
But there is a knowing that you're in deep sleep because you can recall you were in deep sleep
Okay.
without any reference point to
Yeah.
any phenomena.
Right.
So vigilance is the very nature of awareness, keeping vigil.
Right.
Very nature. The moment that there's effort for
Yes.
vigilance,
Right.
then the mind has co-opted the vigilance.
Okay.
And there's bound to be then the dropping of vigilance. They go together.
Okay.
That's still an identification of yourself as your with your mind activity.
Okay.
You're not separate from your mind activity, but you are more than your mind activity. The particular mind activity that you're speaking of appears and it disappears.
Right.
But you, as you truly are always here. Always. So if you look back now to one of those times, one of those instances where you got totally identified
Right.
with the drama, with the movie.
Right.
This, Anne-Louise, this is the answer to your question too. And then you didn't like
Right.
the behavior that came out of that.
Right.
So in looking back, can you just take a moment and look back?
Yes.
Can you see the moment that you left the truth in your mind and identified with the drama. There is a particular, well, there are lots of moments leading into it,
Right.
but there's a moment where there's a choice. It comes with the speed of light, but did you see in the paper today they've even stopped light? So the speed of light is not what it used to be. So the ego appears, which is false identification, appears with the speed of light, but you are present as it appears. So you are present as it appears. So when you look back in your mind to
Yes.
that moment,
Okay.
what occurred?
It looks like the identification just happened, and
I understand it looks like
Yes.
that, but I'm asking you, are you a scientist?
I'm an engineer.
An engineer? Okay.
Yes.
I'm asking you to look a little closer at the really small mechanism. Because you look from the outside and you say, oh boy, that just happened. Like
Yes.
that wheel just started turning.
Right.
But if you look a little closer, you see, aha, the wheel didn't just start turning. There was a little thing here and a little thing there and that, and then the wheel, the momentum got it going. So I'm asking you now to look deeper. What some pattern fueled by some emotion,
Right.
accompanied by some thought.
It's probably it looks like the past tendencies.
And what is this past tendency?
It is a habit that might have developed through the years.
Yes, but I'm saying, how did this habit get chosen in this particular incident? So maybe it just appears out of the
Right.
past momentum.
Right.
But there is a moment, it seems like it's a sliver of time. But if you actually put your magnifying glass on it, which is consciousness, you
Right.
will see in slow motion there were many choices.
Yes.
So first there is the emotion, which is big. And then there is a choice to indulge that emotion or repress that emotion. And you have chosen both in different times.
Right.
And you repress it and then it squeezes out in some other time.
Right.
Or you indulge it and then you dramatize it out.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because this is not, it is particular in this case, but it's universal. Because it has seemed to be having its own momentum, I'm just being who I am, then there's not a questioning of really, who you are is radiant, aware consciousness. You are now being who you think you are. And this thought of who you are, as you say, has been built up in the past, millions of years. So it has a force, it has a power,
Yes.
but you are consciousness.
Yes.
You are consciousness, so you can examine in the most minute detail the choices of acting out, just like this man was speaking of, listening to the same old thoughts. So here is this very familiar pattern, and it comes in blowing horns. You know it's coming in. You feel it in your body. You're starting to think those thoughts again.
Yes.
You're feeling either self-righteous or blame. I don't know what your particular pattern is. I'm using a kind of anger pattern as an example. And then you are justified in doing whatever you do. Right?
Yes.
It's very familiar.
Yeah.
Does this apply to anybody out there? And then in the looking back, it's like, well, I don't know what happened. It just happened. But when there's a desire to know what happened, and that's what I'm hearing you speak, and that's what you wrote me about, then there is the possibility to see there was a choosing of consciousness to re-identify with some old, dead movie. I say it's old and dead because you don't have the desire to identify with it anymore. It really doesn't thrill you anymore, except maybe in the moment. You see the destruction of it.
Yes.
You see how it bleeds the life energy from you and people
Right.
around you.
Yes.
And you see how it uses up the creative force of your life. So it's old and dead.
Right.
That's where your power to see exactly where you are choosing to re-identify comes from.
So at a certain point in time, I do have a choice.
Yes, don't you?
I do have a choice.
Yes. Don't
Okay.
you? Look back.
But if I am very vigilant, if I am
Well,
extremely
forget
vigilant,
that, because we're not talking about you being
Right.
very vigilant.
Exactly,
because
because-
we're talking about you weren't very vigilant.
Exactly, right.
Which it's very skillful means to assume you won't be very vigilant.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, I wasn't vigilant. Let us see how it was. There was a re-identification, because there is not re-identification if there is vigilance. And if there is not vigilance, then there is something to learn. And what you can learn, what is learnable, is the ABC of how you re-identify. You can't learn the self. You can't learn consciousness. You can't learn love. You can't learn trust. But you can learn how you deny that, because there are techniques, there are strategies. There is either indulgence or repression. And with both of those, there is an avoidance of simply experiencing the immensity of the moment, the power of the moment, where everything in your past is saying, attack. There is this power, this force that, if it is experienced, is then a force of light, a force of love, a force of consciousness meeting itself here, deeper than ever. If it is denied or repressed, it's just the same old habit. If it is indulged, it's just the same old violence. This is you're speaking of addiction.
to a certain extent.
Yes,
Yes.
a certain kind of addiction, a kind of addiction to a pattern.
Right.
And with addiction, there has to be a point where you see perhaps the desire is out of your control. Maybe it's physiological. Maybe it's been practiced for so long that it has its own groove. So that's out of your control. I'm not saying that's in your control, but what is in your control, absolutely, is this willingness to not move when it appears. This willingness to not indulge. This willingness to not repress. This willingness to be in the fire of this impulse of thousands of years. It's certainly at least all the years of this lifetime. And have you ever experienced that?
Yes.
Yes. So you know the beauty of that. So you know, then there was a willingness. In that moment, actually, there's a willingness to die. Because an addiction can be so strong, and certainly the addiction to mind or habits is so strong that there is the sense, I will die. I will die if I don't strike out. I will die if I don't attack. That's what an attack is about, right? Protecting me from dying. And so there's a willingness, because of maturity of the soul. Okay, if I die, I will die. But I am not going to follow this demon again, down this road again. So this is the mind, but it's the mind being in service to what was betrayed. The vigilance was betrayed. So it's the mind being humbled, and then it is feels like a descent into hell. Because with any addiction, the impulse is so strong to get rid of the craving, to get rid of the fire. How? And there are millions of ways how. But instead to not get rid of it, not go numb with it, to let it burn. This is the fire. This is what Buddha goes through with all the temptations. This is Christ in the desert. Everyone has to experience this. Oh my God, I'm dying. Okay, I'm dying. I surrender. And there's peace. And there's freedom. And you recognize what never left. Always here. And there's also a break in a habit pattern. It doesn't have the hold on you. It may reappear, but there is something bigger than the habit pattern. You follow this?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes, I do.
because you have an experience of it. So still I want you to recognize that there are many moments before the acting out. Many choices. They happen very, very fast.
Yes.
But if you will slow them down in your mind, just slow the film down of this movie, you will see, aha, yeah. And there's a justification that comes. And there's a kind of thrill of the adrenaline and the power that comes with it. And there's a kind of quick excuse making. And well, so-and-so did, or it doesn't matter, or we're all one, it's still self, or, or my guru did, or da-da-da-da. All of that, that's all thought, to not follow any of it. Because it's all the sirens saying, come, come, come back into where you are all powerful, where you are in control, where you are God, where you get to say what happens. You don't move. Don't move. And there is an exquisite experience that can never be taken from you that is revealed.
Yeah, but those moments have happened. Those things have
Yes.
come back. It can be a pattern, as you said. It's a conditional pattern that is coming back.
Yes, good.
Yeah.
Then
and it's
it
coming
means
back.
there is something that still is unseen, which
Yeah.
is even more deeply humbling for the mind. Because that's all we're speaking of, is a humbling for the mind. That's what the fire is. The fire is the resistance, the friction of the mind constantly seeking control of this particular situation. And the refusal to follow the mind then creates a certain fire, burning. And if it comes back, well, good. There must be more here to see.
But there's a lot of suffering at that moment.
Yes, but it is conscious suffering. It is conscious suffering. This is very different then from delaying the suffering and following, indulging, and discharging the suffering, and then the suffering is spread out over time. Then there's still the suffering of the misidentification. To get to paradise, there has to be a descent into the hell that has been created by mind. Let's say not even your mind, your parents' mind, the genetics that fed into the creation of this particular hell. The descent into that so that you recognize you are more than that. It is a scary descent. And there is the tendency to go, no, I don't have to do that, it's all self. Oh, no, it doesn't matter, it's all just a movie. Well, that's great if it's true. But if that's just a strategy or a covering, and the habit patterns continue, then what have you got to lose? If it's all self, what have you got to lose discovering that in fact, in the midst of hell, there is God, radiant. Then hell itself is liberated. Your past demons, your hungry ghosts that have been haunting you and waking you up at 4 a.m. and criticizing and self-hatred and torture, they are liberated. That's what gets liberated. Self is not liberated. It was never bound. What gets liberated are the demons of your mind as well as the gods of your mind. Set them free. You are sick of them. You are sick of playing with them and being played by them. Set them free. That's all I'm saying. And the way to set them free is to be willing to not play the game. And this willingness takes enormous resolve, huge resolve. It's a little different from vigilance, because resolve comes after vigilance has been betrayed, after re-identification has set in. But it is the mind's resolve to recognize the hell that has once again been created and to be here, to burn. And in that burning, there is redemption. Naturally. Not somebody coming in and redeeming you, but naturally redemption. And you recognize it was all a movie. It's God's movie. It's a huge movie. And it has corners and surprises and slopes that are undreamed of, unheard of, that no movie, even our greatest movie makers and playwrights have never even touched. They catch a coattail of it and we fall out in awe. This is your life. This is your life.
Also, if this is consciousness itself playing this movie, why is consciousness making me go through this suffering?
Because consciousness picked you out to hate. Why not? In all movies, somebody's got to suffer. What kind of story is it if there's no suffering? Would you really be interested if there's no suffering? So what happens then is, but the suffering and the resistance to the suffering are one and the same. The resolution occurs when there is suffering. Isn't this what the Buddha said? Life is suffering. And there's a way out. And the way out is in. Directly, consciously. Meet the suffering. Even Christ said this, if you know how to suffer, you do not suffer. So if you will know how it is you suffer, you do not suffer. But this must be known, rather than, see, even the question why is an avoidance of knowing how it is this continues. How it is, right here in this universe, patterns of war still appear. Because that's what we're talking about, war, right? Even though you have tasted peace, even though this universe has tasted peace, peace on earth, how is it that conflict still has its way? This is true of every mind stream, especially humans. War is inbred. And it has gone unmet. What has happened is war has been made on war. And the child of that is more war. So to meet that war within yourself, consciously, awake, refusing to budge, meeting war, you will find peace. If you have tasted it, then you know it's so. If you have not, it may seem impossible, but taste it and see. Just take one moment in the midst of one attacking pattern and don't budge, because under the behavior there's the energy of an emotion. And that emotion is fueled by some thought of protection, or being wounded or hurt or not seen. In the willingness to experience that being wounded or hurt or not seen, to really be wounded, really hurt, really not seen, then it's no big deal. Then the wound is nothing. The hurt is nothing. And not being seen, you can't be seen. You are the self. You cannot be seen. You are not an object. The most important thing I can leave you with is not the idea of vigilance, but the reality of vigilance. And in your inviting vigilance into every moment of your life, then the idea is dropped of what vigilance is. Because if you have an idea of vigilance as being doing something, even in the slightest, it takes some effort, some maintenance, and therefore it cannot be done 24 hours a day. But you can recognize that vigilance is natural to simple awareness. And awareness is always present. In our evolution as a species, we have accumulated an enormous amount of stuff. Some of it was useful at one point and is only a burden at this point. In being true to the vigilance that is your nature and having the intention to tell the truth, to be free, you will see. If you are true to the accumulation of stuff, then that's what you will see. There is a huge arrogance of mind that perhaps has served humans quite well. I mean, we are lords of the planet. But look what we are doing. So at this moment in time, in your life, in your acceptance of the truth of who you are to be the guide for your life, there is a real possibility that this human experiment will not end in total failure. But only a possibility. If it does, awareness remains. But as awareness incarnated as human beings on a planet called Earth, we have the invitation to be completely responsible for where we find ourselves and what is here. If your intention is to be true to your mind, to be true to being right, to be true to knowing, you will have enormous support for that. If your intention is to be true, period, you also have enormous support for that. That's why it is finally your choice. It's very important to not confuse choice and choicelessness. If you are telling yourself a story of choicelessness, stop. If a story has to be told about choicelessness, this is not choicelessness. There is choice being overlooked. Choicelessness is what is permanently here, free of all stories, unaffected by any story. But you find yourself in a story called your life, or human being, or Earth, or this Milky Way. Wherever you find yourself, that's where you tell the truth. In telling that truth, a deeper truth will be revealed. And finally, the choiceless truth of who you are is revealed. But this does not cancel out all of the relative truths along the way. People have used spiritual understanding throughout time for ego magnification. So be very aware that will appear. It must appear. It's very humbling for it to appear. If there is this desire to keep it away, then very subtly a denial mechanism arises, where this is not arrogance, this is the truth, the choiceless truth. You recognize that at all? Good. It must be recognized, and then its power is hobbled. Yes, arrogance will appear. Let it appear, so the pain of it can be experienced, so the lie of it can be experienced, and then tell the truth.